Namaste ji, namaste. Welcome to Courtroom. Hope you're doing well. So the Republic Day just went by and it has a connect with the Supreme Court of India. In this very short lecture, we are going to be discussing the history of the Supreme Court, its connect with the Republic Day, and some things about its predecessor known as the Federal Court of India. Now, the Constitution was adopted and enacted on the 26th November 1949 as given in the preamble of India, and the Constitution commenced, or formally known as commencement of the Constitution, that is the day that we celebrate our Republic Day, on 26th of January 1950. This is mentioned in Article 394 of the Constitution. Some bits of the Constitution were activated. You can say they became alive on the 26th November 1949, but others were activated on 26th January 1950, including a crucial article that went alive on this very day is Article 124, which says there shall be a Supreme Court of India. It is given under Part 5. Part 5 has 5 chapters. Chapter 1, the Executive. Chapter 2, the Parliament. Chapter 3, Legislative powers of the President. Chapter 4, the Union Judiciary. Chapter 5 is CAG. But Chapter 4, the Union Judiciary, is starting from Article 124, and that became alive on the 26th January. So the Supreme Court came into existence on the 26th January 1950, a very popular MCQ in any and every law entrance except CLAT these days, because CLAT usually doesn't go into these details. But good details to note down for later. Now, Article 124 became alive, somebody went dead. That is the name of the Federal Court, the predecessor of the Supreme Court of India, and the Supreme Court has now come into existence. Fun fact, Mahurat nahi kiya humne on the 26th of January. So, academically, on paper, it has come alive, but we waited. 2 days later, the Supreme Court of India was inaugurated on the 28th of January 1950. This is a very, very crucial date to note. And the inauguration was done in the present Parliament building, because the present building on Tilak Marg that you see did not exist till 1958. So there was a space constraint. We never really envisaged building a dedicated building for Supreme Court till then, and then it took us 8 years to build one. All right. So the inauguration was held in the Parliament building in the Chamber of Princes, where from 1937 to 1950 the Federal Court had operated. Two crucial figures to note on this inauguration day: CJI, the first CJI was H.J. Kania, and the first Attorney General of India is MC Setalvad. Alright, so Chamber of Princes के अंदर हमने inauguration करी. And 1958 we went to the present building. We started off with the central wing. So this entire building is designed to represent the scale of the justice, or the taraju of the scales of justice, you can say. The taraju ji mein, then we added the west wing, we added the east wing in 1979. CJI sits in courtroom number 1 in the central pillar, and basically it shows that, well, these CJI is sitting at the very center of justice. All right. Now, what is the difference between the Federal Court and the Supreme Court? Because we gave Supreme Court a wide ambit of powers. Federal Court, the most crucial one, Federal Court didn't have the power of judicial review. That is, it would not double check the legislature from doing what it usually tries to do as per its own whim and fancy. But it had some aspects of original jurisdiction, that is the original jurisdiction that is mentioned under Article 131, but it didn't have the power of judicial review, which is one of the most crucial aspects of the present day Supreme Court. The Federal Court came into existence, or was existed due to the GOI Act 1935. The Supreme Court exists because Article 124 mentions that there shall be a Supreme Court of India under Part 5, Chapter 4. Federal Court के ऊपर भी आप appeal लगा सकते हैं. So you could go into appeal with the Federal Court to go to the Judicial Committee of Privy Council in London. In the Supreme Court, technically speaking, you can't go in for appeal, but let us say that you want to get a judgment reviewed. Then under Article 137, you can go for a review. You can go for a double review, aka a curative petition, as mentioned in Ashok Hurra versus Rupa Hurra. So there are two ways that you can technically, in layman language, appeal, but it is not really an appeal. You cannot really go above the Supreme Court for some other body to hear your case because you disagree with the judgment. But in the Federal Court, in some cases where the eligibility criteria was met, you could go to London. Now, no more, because we are completely independent and the Supreme Court is, well, it's supreme, right? Alright, so till 1958, due to a lack of dedicated office, the Supreme Court only used to function for 28 days per annum into 4 hours. and that's it, क्योंकि वो Chamber of Princes में इतनी वगैरह जगह भी नहीं थी. But then in 1958 we set up a dedicated building. So now we have a lot of jurisdictions of the Supreme Court. Original jurisdiction mentioned in 131, appellate jurisdiction ये वाली, advisory jurisdiction under Article 143, wherein the President can ask the Supreme Court for its advice. The minimum number of judges is 5, as given in Article 145. The writ jurisdiction, as mentioned in Article 32, which in itself is a fundamental right. The right to move the Supreme Court is a fundamental right, and it is guaranteed, which is given in Part 3. The primary difference between the Federal Court and the Supreme Court, first, is there was no judicial review. Back then, in the GI Act 1935, there were no dedicated fundamental rights. So now the Supreme Court is sitting to ensure that fundamental rights, Part 3 of the Constitution, Article 12 to 35, is followed. Brief history of the Supreme Court of India, often asked in law entrances. Each and every pointer can be framed into a question, and hopefully this has been of help to you. Hopefully the rishta between the Supreme Court and the Republic Day of India is clear. Wishing you all the very best for any law entrance exam that you're preparing for. Take care. Bye.